all got started it was last summer, I think. Laura and I were chatting and decided that we'd apply for a CERTS seed grant to do some research on community solar. Submit the grant, and through a fairly competitive process, we're selected, and so we've had the opportunity to dig into this topic and really get into the weeds on what community solar could look like in Minnesota. So again, yes, Trevor's here from CERTS. Thank you so much for your support. We're very, very happy that we were able to do this. And yes, very good. And as we got started, we realized this is not the first time that MRES has looked into community solar. I think this predates both Laura and I, but way back in 2005, as part of the Million Solar Roofs grant, MRES, along with CR Planning, I believe, Brian Ross was involved, put together a report on community solar. So this has been a topic that people have been interested in for a long time, and since 2005, a lot of work has been done across the country. So actually my job was fairly simple. I just had to dig through all the work that had already been done and pull out what I thought was most relevant and most interesting for Minnesota. So next, yes. But before I dive in, I'll just say a few words about how I got here. So my background is in architecture and planning. I did my architecture degree here at the University of Minnesota, and this is where I started to think about buildings and energy and people and energy. And then after I finished that degree, I went back for more school, just couldn't get enough, and did a degree in planning. And this kind of built on my architecture background and got me thinking about people and energy and communities, and the role communities play in creating our energy future. And so after grad school, I ended up getting thrown into the deep end of the pool in the solar world and worked for a small vertically integrated solar company in upstate New York, which was a great experience while it lasted. And then from there went on to work with the New York City Solar America City program. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Solar America City program. It was a DOE program which ended just last year, I believe, and the Minneapolis and St. Paul also got a grant and did some work. It was all about building markets and driving down costs. And while I was in New York City, we got funding to do a project on community solar. And so this was kind of my first opportunity to really dive into what is community solar, what are some of the different models out there, what are the obstacles, and what are the opportunities. And so our deliverable in New York City was we put together a big report, and we also did the framework, set up the groundwork to do a pilot project. And that's kind of where they were when I left, the end of 2011, beginning of 2012. And so now I've been back in Minnesota about a year and still working in solar. Last summer I worked with the Metropolitan Energy Policy Coalition on a solar project, and now I work with Utectics Consulting. We think about finance all day. So moving on. I realized, a clicker, awesome, yay. I've actually given presentations on community solar now 3 times, and because I've always had a really short amount of time, I kind of run right past the big question of what is community solar. So I wanted to take some time, because I have more time tonight, to really dig into this. What exactly is it? So there's lots of different flavors, but the flavor of community solar that I want to focus on tonight is a single solar electric system that provides power and financial benefit to multiple community members. So this can be a small number or a large number, but the key factor here is one system, many people getting benefit. So, and this is in contrast to some of the other flavors of community solar, which are really great also, but that's just not what we focused on in this project. One which many of you may be familiar with are the volume purchasing or bulk purchasing programs. I know we have at least one active here in South Minneapolis. Two of the kind of pioneers in this area were the Solarize program, which first started in Portland and then has spread across the country with a lot of success. And also One Block Off the Grid, which was a for-profit company that used this model to really drive residential solar in various hot spots around the country. And another model which has sprung up in a few different areas, which also is a different flavor of community solar, is the retail cooperative model. And Cooperative Community Energy is a group in California that has also been very successful. And like a cooperative, the members are the owners, and the member owners are the ones who can take advantage of the solar services and the reduced prices on solar. So that has been a real big success there. And another model which I came across, which this is the only example I could find, but it's also a really interesting flavor of community solar. The Arizona Public Service Community Power Project is a group that essentially organizes community PPAs. They get a group of people together in one area and they negotiate a PPA that multiple people will participate in. So they have levelized cost of energy for however long the PPA runs, and they're able to take advantage of solar at a reduced cost. So.
I want to tell people what PPA stands for.
Good call. Thanks, Tom. PPAs are a power purchase agreement, and this is where you negotiate with the utility, or usually a third party will negotiate with the utility. The third party will own the system, and they will essentially sell power back to a host at a set rate for a set amount of time. So a lot of the companies that are well known that do PPAs are the Sunrun, Solar City, Sungevity. That they aren't really active in Minnesota yet, but on the coast and other markets, they've really made a big impact. So, in some, these are some really cool models, but this isn't what we focused on. And so, what we focused on was a flavor of community solar that could really get at the underserved market, the people who can't access solar for a variety of reasons, whether that's because they're renters. I fall into this category. I rent. So even though I obsess about solar for a ridiculous number of hours every week, I can't participate in the solar market. I can't buy solar because I don't have control over my own roof. And another group of people are the folks who they may own their home, they may have control over their roof, but they just don't have a good roof for solar, whether that's because they have shading trees, maybe they have a beautiful 80-year-old oak tree that they're not going to cut down. Or maybe they just don't have a good configuration for the roof for solar, or they live in a neighborhood with a covenant and they can't, for whatever reason, install solar. And also, though this limitation is slowly going away with some of the new financing models, a lot of people just don't have the capital or the access to capital to invest in a solar system themselves. They would like to participate, but the upfront cost of 2 or 3 kilowatts on their own roof is just out of reach for them. And so I had to add some more flair since people have seen this presentation before, perhaps. So why is this important? And as I mentioned before, I've done a lot of thinking about people and energy and communities, and why is this important? And I think it's important because we want everybody to be able to participate. And when everyone participates, we can grow the market faster. We can reduce emissions faster. We can create more jobs. We can achieve all of these wonderful things that we know solar does. And I don't need to preach to this choir about all the wonderful things that solar does. And so this is one of the key reasons we wanted to look into this topic. So, moving on. So, but this is a tough nut to crack. And real quickly, kind of the challenge at hand with all these different models that we're going to look at, they're all trying to get at these challenges in different ways. And essentially, the technology, solar, and some of the other technologies around solar have outrun, they've gone way past where our policy and regulations are right now. And so it's all of this trying to fit a peg into a hole that just doesn't fit. And so some examples of this are, community solar doesn't really fit our renewable energy connection rule, interconnection rules. Because they were designed for one person or one home, one interconnection spot, one bill. It just doesn't fit this model. The way the utility has designed these interconnection rules, it's a funny fit. And also current SEC investment rules. This whole question of how do you distribute the benefit of solar, whether that's through credits on a bill or in some kind of return on investment, our investment rules just aren't designed for this type of investment. and also our infrastructure. And this applies to both our grid, which we all know is aging and behind, and also to the back-end IT infrastructure at our utilities. In New York City, that was our biggest stumbling block, is when we talked to our investor-owned utility about community solar, the first thing they brought up was our billing system can't do it, which it seems silly, but that for them and their perspective, it was a multi-million-dollar project that was not a high priority to upgrade their massively complex back-end billing system to accommodate for multiple people gaining the benefit from a single solar system. Simple problem, but huge barrier. So now I'm going to dive into some of the models that I explored that have emerged from across the country. And real quick, there are 5 MAVE models that I'll talk about, and there are much more, but I won't bore you with all of them. These are the big ones. And so the first one I looked at was a special entity or LLC model. This is actually quite common in the wind world. Well, you'll see a group of people come together, form an LLC. They'll be the owner of the project, they'll get financing, and they'll be the benefactors of the system. And as it is in the wind world also, it's quite difficult and expensive to form these LLCs and to navigate all of the SEC investor regulations. So that's the biggest barrier. In the wind world, you're usually talking about projects that are much, much larger, and so that upfront investment in forming these legal structures is a little bit more justified. But for example, if you're talking about a 100 kilowatt solar project, it kind of sinks the project. It doesn't really work. So, but there are some companies across the country that have developed kind of templated or canned versions of the LLC model. And one of them, I have to remember that. My slides don't go, those slides go. My Generation Energy is a company out of, I think, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they have worked with a lot of communities on the East Coast, providing sort of full service community solar model using an LLC. And they've gone through the work of setting up the templates to create the LLC and have it all figured out. So by doing multiple, they're able to get those economies of scale. And another interesting model, the nonprofit or donation model, has use but different applications than installing large solar systems. Most of them are owned and hosted by nonprofits. So, for example, this church. And they're usually financed by memberships, donation contributions, or grants. And so the benefiters are usually the nonprofit and people who are members of the nonprofit. For example, if it was this church, it would be all the members of the congregation. And usually the participants are not motivated by a return on their investment. They're motivated because they want to support this organization that they're a part of, or it's purely philanthropic donation. So, but the big barrier to this model is nonprofits can't take advantage of tax benefits. And when you take that off the table, it really decreases the economic argument for solar. So, but one, and again, oh, sorry. And another, one organization that we worked with a lot in New York who was using a flavor of this model, IOBI. They did a lot of funding of smaller community projects. As you see, they also funded solar. Their sweet spot for projects was quite small in dollar amount, usually under $10,000. And so this would not be appropriate for funding a large solar system, but solar has many applications. And for example, a solar-powered eco-shed was a great fit for them. And this project was funded and constructed last summer. So, next model I want to talk about is the micro-investment model. Many of you have probably heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo. This is that style of a model. Usually, investments are collected through an online platform, and I'm not sure if you've ever used Kickstarter, but you do get some sort of a return, but it's not a traditional return. And so last year, there was some legislation passed, the Jobs Act, which people have high hopes will convert this kind of novelty crowdfunding model into a real driver for developing a lot of different things. It will allow multiple big groups of people to invest smaller amounts of money in things that they believe in, things that they're excited in. Whether this be developing a video game or the next album of your favorite artist or a community solar project on your favorite nonprofit. And in theory, when the Jobs Act when they come out with the rules and it takes effect, then people will be able to see a real monetary return on their investment. And so, unfortunately, they're now 4 months behind on coming out with those rules. They were supposed to come out at the end of 2012, and they still haven't come out yet. And I actually went to a presentation on this subject on Saturday, and the excitement is a bit tempered. They are predicting that when the rules do come out, there are going to be very strict disclosure requirements. And this is all about protecting the consumer. After the crash in 1929, the Securities Act of 1933 created these frameworks around securities to protect us. So this isn't a bad thing, but it will kind of limit the applicability of the Jobs Act. And another thing that they're predicting, that there'll be really strict limitations around what kind of investors can participate. For example, at this presentation, they talked about approved investors, which would include people who have a degree in finance or work in finance or make over $200,000 a year. I don't know about you, but I don't qualify. So it doesn't necessarily increase accessibility when you have requirements like that around who can participate. So it's unfortunate, but we'll see. I remain optimistic, but we'll see. More of the story, it's likely to be very complicated, and it's going to be capped at $1 million. So $1 million may seem like a lot of money, but it goes fast. So one company that has kind of gone ahead of the legislation and tried to create a crowdfunding model around solar is Mosaic out of Oakland, California. And they actually put some projects out on their platform earlier this year, and they were fully funded within a day, seemingly very successful. It's kind of interesting. It's as if they've tried to imitate what's going to happen with the Jobs Act, but without the Jobs Act. I haven't quite figured it out, but I did find it very interesting that with all their projects that went online, they had a 60-page disclosure document, and you don't want to read the disclosure document because it just kind of cracked open exactly what was going on behind their model and did not necessarily build confidence. But it's a really cool thing, and I hope that it works. So we'll see. And most of their projects, if you can see on here, so the investors will see returns in the range of 4 to 7%, which isn't bad, especially in this economy. It's not bad. And all of their projects, again, are on nonprofits, and I believe you can invest as little as $100. So, and moving on to utility models. So, my notes up here are freezing up. I guess I won't use them. So the utility model is where the solar system would be owned and controlled by the utility or a third party, financed by the utility, and hosted by a utility or a third party. So this model works out really well because utilities control your bill, and they are the best candidate to actually be able to apply that benefit from the solar system onto your bill, which is very important. Studies have shown that people really internalize kind of the energy lesson, if you will, from solar if they see it actually on their bill. It's not the same if you get a check every month, or it's just if you have that detached from the actual energy use in your home. Even if the solar isn't on your roof, people are much more cognizant of their energy use if they can see that credit on their bill. It makes them look at their bill, which otherwise they may not. So, so that's why the utility model has a big advantage. And And so the subscribers have to usually be ratepayers within that utilities area. And the only real potential negative is if the utility doesn't buy in to supporting community solar, which more and more are. So that's a really optimistic thing that we're seeing even here in Minnesota. Many of you may have been here last, was it October, when Steve Nisbet from Wright Hennepin came in and spoke about their community solar project. That's a great example of a utility really supporting the idea of community solar and doing a pilot project. So we hope that will be very successful, and more projects like that will emerge in Minnesota. So, and many states across the country have passed legislation to support community solar. Colorado is a great example. They passed a legislation in 2010, and the first kind of iteration of that program opened up last year with 4.5 megawatts of smaller projects and 4.5 megawatts of larger projects. And whether or not this points to extreme success or like some flaw in the program design, it was fully subscribed in 30 minutes, which might tell you that it was a bit too generous, but that's a really great program that we hope will succeed also. I spoke actually with some of the folks in Colorado during the course of this research, and it sounds like projects are moving forward. They're ranging from in the engineering phase to moving forward, and the biggest issue that has come up is siting. So,
and did it still offer rebates on those too?
It wasn't necessarily a rebate. They got a higher rate for the power, and then the developer also got, I think it was a per kilowatt. Kind of, I guess you could call it a rebate. Not entirely sure how much, but subsidy. Yeah, yep. There was a performance-based component to it. So, and the last model that I quickly wanted to touch on are the green power purchase programs. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with WindSource. This is a similar idea, but for solar. And Green Mountain Energy is an ESCO more active on the East Coast and in the South. But they've started a program called the Sun Club, which participants can have an extra $5 tacked onto the bill, and that $5 will go towards supporting solar projects in their community. Right now it's only available in 3 states, but it looks like it has been pretty successful. It's most active in Texas, and it looked like they had a couple dozen projects in Texas that have been funded through this program. And it's also set up so organizations, nonprofits, other community groups can apply to participate and have their solar system funded through this program. So it also helps to get at those underserved organizations.
Do you know how big a percentage of people actually opt for the extra $5 on their bill?
I'm not sure. It's different than the Excel program in that Green Mountain Energy is separate from the utility. And so I remember when I was living out east, they would be at every single environmental event with their table trying to get you to sign up for their programs. But on like a percentage of total people in a utilities service area and how many people participate in this program, very small. But, yes?
Who is owning and hosting? It says community and cultural facilities. I mean, what's a concrete example of who's the owner and host of these?
I believe they're still owned by Green Mountain Energy. And the hosts would be essentially
Owned by Green
Green Mountain Energy, yeah.
Any sense of the economics on how much your $5 a month buys you?
Not much. I'm not sure.
Well, in WindSource, that's about what it costs me for WindSource.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how much you use. I mean,
Right.
solar too, so I only pay $1.50 a month.
Right. They're not making any sort of promise that this $5 is offsetting all of your use with clean solar power.
It comes off your bill, but does anything appear on your bill?
It's just an extra $5. I don't think it has any effect on what you're actually paying your utility for your energy use. It's essentially a donation. That's the way I understood it. Which.
But if you sponsor a Feed the Children person, you're getting a face on your letter
Yeah.
I'm wondering what kind of face they're going to put on this letter.
I think you're getting
Satisfaction.
this is the solar.
Sell.
You're buying green offsets, basically, for the
But is there an equivalent on your bill, I guess is what I'm saying.
The way I understood it, it's not reflected as a deduction in your amount of energy that you. It's
And I would expect it to be, but are they attributing certain savings, certain shift from, say, coal power energy to solar, a certain proportion on your bill? I mean, do they give you the trees? Do they give you the CO2 offset?
I would imagine they do. I cut it off on this screenshot, but it was right below that. And I would imagine they break that out on your bill. If you've been a member of the program for 2 years and you've donated X dollars, that you've contributed to the X amount of solar. I've never seen a bill, but I would imagine the smart marketing people thought of that. So, because it's a cool program. Maybe something to think about lobbying for here. And after looking at all these different models, I quickly realized that the really successful projects that have emerged across the country did not fit cleanly into any single one of those. They were often this sort of hybrid. And I think a really great example of that is a Clean Energy Collective. And this is the group that Wright Hennepin worked with to develop their project. And Clean Energy Collective has been very active in Colorado, utilizing the new community solar program there. I forget exactly how many of the projects that are moving forward are Clean Energy Collective, but it's a significant number. And so the model that Clean Energy Collective has developed is sort of this hybrid of, it's an LLC model, but it also, they're working with nonprofits. They're pulling in, a lot of times working with the utility. In the case of Wright Hennepin, really partnering with the utility. And so CEC is not the only group like this that has emerged. There's probably a half a dozen groups that are doing similar type, full kind of turnkey community solar services. And so it looks like this is probably where the future is going. Because it can be so complex, the legal load of setting up that first project, it's so expensive and so time consuming that it really makes sense that once you've done it once, that is the best way to scale. So we'll see. But like I said, there are multiple organizations like CEC emerging, so hopefully we'll see some competition and see this, this phenomenon really kind of get fine-tuned and become a really competitive market. Oh, I did it again. So anyway, there we go, Clean Energy Collective. And so I mentioned it a few times, going to mention it again because I'm just really excited about it. Wright Hennepin, I believe they're going to be installing this spring. Panels are on sale if you happen to be in their service territory. $869 will get you a panel of solar. It's really cool. Sorry?
Why battery storage?
Interesting. They decided to go with battery storage to help kind of load shift. And this helped create more of an incentive for the solar or for the utility to participate.
Steve Nesbitt has a video on our website. Watch him explain that.
Yeah. I guess it's we're all probably very familiar with the utility's attitude towards solar at times, and this helped make it a really attractive project for them when they could pair the solar with storage and really start to affect how they manage their load. That was really attractive to them. Just the solar was not as an attractive project for them, but adding the battery storage, they went for it.
But obviously, you're taking power away from the production of the system through the course of the day to charge the batteries. So that's kind of cutting down how much, I mean, it might spread out over the course of the day how long it's contributing to the grid, but it's actually, I don't know, does it work out where you're actually getting the same amount of power over the course of the day as if you had no battery storage?
I believe so, and I think it might even,
In their model, they only predicted, I think, maybe a usage rate of like between 6 to 12 times a year to use the battery backup. So for them, it was shift loading to meet peak demand when they're getting there. So it wasn't a daily use model.
Yeah, and it's a test as much as anything to see what kind of peak demand they can have.
Just a question, is it because they're selling to members of the cooperative only? And is there's some types of rules as to how much any given member can purchase that they are to avoid the SEC machinations?
Correct, because it's appearing as kind of a credit on their bill, they avoid the SEC issues. And totally lost my train of thought. So yeah, that's one huge advantage of having the utility manage the program or participate in the program, because my understanding is, I don't exactly understand the SEC rules, but if the power is being converted directly into credits on a utility bill, it's not looked at the same. So, Zach?
Could I participate in community solar as an investment opportunity?
Currently, with Right Hennepin, no. If you're outside of their service territory, you can't participate because they don't actually give you a return. It's just credits on your bill. And this is a great example of where they worked with CEC, who brought to the table sort of a canned IT solution for their back end that helped them implement the distribution of credits onto multiple bills from a single solar system. That's one service that CEC offers. And so that's the way it would work if you're outside of their territory. Lobby your utility. So real quick, some of the barriers to community solar in Minnesota. For one, the 400 kW cap on net metering doesn't help. You really need to get some scale to make this worthwhile, but hopefully that 40K cap will be going away soon. Fingers crossed. The expensive formation costs, I talked about this a little bit with the SEC model. It does just tend to sink projects if you're doing a one-off and you're having to go through all the legal work of setting up an entity to do it. And then just to demonstrate, I put a little securities lawyer friend on there. He makes $400 to $500 an hour. So if you need to tap into his services a lot, it gets expensive. And for smaller projects, it's just not worth it. And again, SEC requirements are very complex, and the distribution of solar benefits can be complicated, especially if the utility hasn't built that into their back end. So, and to conclude, I wanted to say a few words about the MRES Community Solar Project, the potential Community Solar Project. Many of you may be aware that we have submitted an application for RDF funding to do a pilot. Fingers crossed, it's going to be incredibly competitive, so we'll see this summer what happens. The way it stands now, we'll be working with CEC. They've had a lot of success with other projects, so we thought that'd be a great way to ensure success for this pilot. And then moving forward, we hope that after this pilot, we'll be able to do more projects and maybe come up with a uniquely Minnesota type model that wouldn't necessitate using a company from Colorado. Nothing against Colorado, but. And so if we do get the funding, it will probably break ground next year. Just, we haven't secured one. That's all going to kind of wait until we know if we got the funding. Yeah. So, but it's very exciting. The model that we're utilizing for this program is based on the Colorado Solar Gardens program. We did this because Excel, of course, is also in Colorado, and they were a big participant in the crafting of that program, complete buy-in, and so it seemed like the most direct route to success is to just adopt what Excel had already bought into in Colorado, bring it up here, and also the IT backend on their billing system, they've already developed that for the Colorado program. So it wasn't necessarily a simple ask, but they seemed open to bringing that infrastructure that they've already developed for the program in Colorado and bringing that up to Minneapolis. So fingers crossed that this starts something here in Minnesota. That was the goal anyway.
Can you say more about the specifics? Maybe some people already know that, but about the specifics. I know you were talking why and so on, but how does that work? Solar gardens model.
Okay. So it is a utility-sponsored program, and they set up special rates and incentives for both of the developer. The program is designed for a third party, either a nonprofit or for-profit developer, to own and sort of administer the community solar projects. And so I can go back to that
I
slide.
just wondered, do people buy in and then get returns, or is it just again, sort of you do this because it's a good cause?
It will show up as credits on your utility bill. So if you buy 3 panels, you'll get the equivalent of whatever those 3 panels are producing.
So there'll be a limited number of panels available for the people who jump on it first and then.
Right. Yep.
I was just going to comment on that. It's
Okay.
very similar to the Colorado model, and the language in the omnibus bill right now around community solar is limiting to 120% of your production, your current usage, and they are going to look at 3 years of your prior consumption, and that time frame might change, but to look at 3 years of your prior consumption, come up with an average, and then you can be, as a subscriber, you can purchase X amount of modules equal to your consumption, or possibly 20% above and beyond. Now, there are some other factors that are coming into play. There's 2 other models beyond. Once we've acquired the law and the ability to do community solar, if VOS, value of solar, comes in, or if buy all, sell all comes in, there's then the option with that community solar project to then go a couple different avenues on how credits and how you would receive benefits from the purchase of those modules.
Thank you, Dustin.
Where could I see the MRES RDF proposal? Is it available?
I'll let Laura feel about
If
it.
you've created such a thing, is it, and sent to Excel, can we read it?
I left that in my board of directors.
Competitive process.
Oh, it's still, okay.
I can answer that. I'm on the RDS advisory board. The current process is that now it goes to an independent consultant to grade it and establish metrics that the PUC approved of, and then that comes back to the advisory board for review and suggestions, which go to Excel, which then go back to the PUC. So right now it's considered trade secret, but at the end, all approved programs become open. I don't know if all applications become open.
I believe the proposals are public.
Yeah, I think the final approved grants are all public.
Okay, that's a great answer, thank you.
All right. Very good. Okay, and that's all I have. So if there are any more questions, fire away, even though that was a good number of questions. How are we doing for time anyway? All right, did pretty well. 12 minutes.
I have a little update.
Sure.
I do know that, we were working in partnership with Excel Energy for the billing. We were gonna have the Excel Energy billing transfer be part of our proposal, and Excel decided that if there were multiple community solar proposals, that wouldn't be fair to have the billing on ours. So Excel Energy did write an RDF proposal for the community solar billing. So it will, I would guess, that will get approved, even if ours doesn't. I'm gonna guess that Excel Energy will have the billing in place by 2015, and
15?
I'm assuming they
14.
should allow.
2015 or 2014?
Well, they'll be approved with the RDF proposal on January 1st, 2014, so I would guess they start work then. We will have billing by 2015.
So the approval of the RDF
We won't know
proposals,
who got that until
end of this year.
November of 2013, and then we
Okay.
sign contracts January of 2014.
Don't they have a back end stuff developed to put it in?
In theory.
They're estimated cost of $200,000 to make it happen.
Yeah, I don't think they fully integrated all of their operations in Colorado and Minnesota, since they used to be separate companies, so.
But they have a model they know how to work with.
Right.
That's my update.
Excellent, I didn't realize that, that's exciting. Great.
So, and also the legislation, and I think Dustin can talk about this more, and that's part of the Clean Energy and Jobs postcards. The community solar is in that be forced to do it regardless of whether they do their billing or not. That is the language we need to keep in the bill, so tell your legislators that that's important. And that would be, I believe, county, is that county based?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Is the solar garden legislation county based? So you have to be in the county where the solar garden is?
No, that was
Is that
the,
taken off?
that is gonna be,
Two separate proposals.
Yeah.
One proposal is, the current one that's in the language is utility regional based. The other proposal suggested a county boundary based, because there's this general consensus amongst stakeholders that there should be something that, you're not putting a community solar project in Duluth and having the people subscribe to it in Rochester. There should be some community aspect to community solar.
So if you have questions on that. Okay, any other questions for Rosie?
So, already have the, you guys are just working on or have submitted,
We submitted April 1st.
Yeah.
is there anything we can do as members to influence that?
You can go beat up Aaron.
I'm highly impartial, you cannot influence us.
Cannot.
There's two environmental seats, two utility seats, and a Prairie Island Indian community seat, and a ratepayer seat. And right now, it's not even in our hands, it's off to the independent consultant, so there's no way. It's not intended to be influenceable. The proposals speak for themselves at this point.
If you guys really want to affect some change with your state senators, the Sierra Club is holding phone banks at their Minneapolis office every Wednesday night. They've got a slick system that allows you to basically receive phone calls, or your cell phone can actually dial into their predictive dialer. It will connect you with Sierra Club members, and you can hit *1 to connect them to their state senator's office, and they can leave a message with their name and where they live, and urging their state senators to support the Clean Energy Omnibus bill. I've done it 2 Saturdays in a row from the Hopkins Depot, solar powered coffee house in Hopkins. So and I'll be there this Saturday from noon to 2. If you guys want me to show you how to do it, you can do it from anywhere. It's the slickest thing I've ever seen. It's so easy to do. And in 2 hours, I connected 16 people to their state senators to urge support of the omnibus bill. So it gives you a good feeling. If it's really something you want to support, put your money where your mouth is. Show up at the Hopkins Depot at noon. I'll put you to work. Or you can go down to the Sierra Club's office on Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 8:30.
Great, thanks, Tom. Anything else, or am I actually going to let you guys go early? All right, that was fun. Great talking.